Namaste, guys. ChristianRLong, Life Enhancement Consulting, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on this Christmas Eve, December 24th at, I think it's about 5 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time here in Denver, Colorado. As you can hear, my voice is a little heavy, a little congested, overcoming a very powerful transformation over the past couple days. And it's taking some time for the physical body to adjust. And my body was so hot last night that I had ice packs, my feet wrapped around ice packs and an ice pack on the back of my head, the fan on. The windows weren't open, but the fan was on, doing everything I can to cool my body down while I go through this transition. But it's all good. Karina, namaste. It's all good. It's all part of the process of growing up, becoming a better soul, a better person, evolution, right? And so I wanted to jump on. I was thinking of what would be a good topic to talk about tonight that would add value to you guys during this time of the year. And something occurred to me last night that I'll share a little bit with you today, as well as there was a Facebook post of a guy that I met at a networking event many, many years ago in Denver. And we just happened to, like most people, connect on Facebook, stay connected on Facebook, and then throughout the years we see each other, what we're up to, what we're doing, how we're doing, etc. And, he never went from business acquaintance into personal acquaintance and developing a friendship with him because it was just the dynamic at the time. But he liked some of my stuff, I like some of his stuff, and we support each other in the digital world, even though he's probably like 5 or 6 miles from my house here in Denver. And so when he was talking, he was sharing a story about having depression since he was 12 years old, and he's in his 50s now. And it's actually been really beautiful from when I met him about 7 years ago and tracking his progress over the past 7 years. And I'm like in awe of what he's been able to do, at least changing Zach, namaste, at least changing himself from a physical standpoint. Now, the cool thing is if you change yourself physically, there's also a degree of changing yourself internally. But as we know about the world of energy, everything happens in the energy world first before it ever materializes physically. So for instance, the chair or couch or car that you're sitting in right now in this very moment in time, right? That was once in the energy world before it materialized physically. Dream out, namaste, meaning somebody had to have an idea of that couch, of that chair, of that car first, subtle vibration, before it ever stepped down from the mental plane into the emotional plane where we have our feelings, into the physical manifestation of it being a car, a couch, a chair, right? So I always encourage people to look at the energy world first, changing the energy world first, before trying to change the physical world. Meaning, from the perspective of finances, we're always about action, 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 doing everything to make something happen in the physical world, making sales calls, going on one-on-ones, creating a product or service, promoting that product or service, right? All the while, we're not doing anything of the inner world. We're not changing our mindset. We're not changing our emotions. We're not changing our energies. Paula, namaste. We're doing nothing in the inner world to change the inner world to improve the outcome of the physical world. Because the inner world is like the architecture, right? It's like setting the blueprints in place. Merry Christmas. Merry almost Christmas. It's setting the blueprints in place, and then we do what we can to follow those blueprints and then create the physical world. So I always encourage people to start with the energy world first, work on becoming a better person, energetically speaking, and that starts in many ways, but with your thoughts, your words, and your emotions, and then you'll have better results, better actions. Make sense? So far I didn't lose anybody? I hope I didn't lose anybody. So as I was reading through his post about suffering from depression and coming from a family of depression, I thought to myself, well, why is it, what are the factors that are causing depression during the holiday season? What are the factors that are causing depression during the holiday seasons? It's multifactored. We say this all the time in pranic healing, that healing is multifactored, multi-causal, and multifaceted, right? So you can't just say, okay, it's that one thing that is causing all the problems in that person's life. So during the holiday season, one factor that can cause depression, less sun is available. In most parts of the world during the winter time, right? There's less solar energy hitting Mother Earth in that part of the world, and solar energy stimulates the environment, right? It feeds us. When we go out in the sun for 10, 15 minutes, our bodies are producing vitamin D. We're feeling amazing. It's affecting our serotonin levels. We're feeling amazing. It affects our melatonin. We sleep better, right? So by getting more sun, it increases our overall energy level, our pranic energy level. It's called solar prana, right? So that's one factor. During the wintertime, we have less solar energy, we have less prana, and if we have, Jared, namaste, if we have less prana and less energy available at this time of the year, then guess what? Our chakras, our energy body feels deprived and depleted, so it's easy to get run down, okay? One factor. Another factor of why depression happens a lot during the holiday seasons is, so it's darker earlier, so less solar energy. Number two, we tend to work more hours during Christmas. Merry Christmas, Jared. We tend to work more hours during Christmas. Why? Because we're trying to, we know we're going to be spending quality time with our family members, and we're also going to use some of our money, our time, and our resources over to buying presents, going on trips, etc. So we work super, super hard for about a month before Christmas, and our stress levels are high, and the stress depletes us of energy, right? So we have, is that Megan? Namaste. So we have less energy, we have less prana, so we are more susceptible to being depleted and to having depression. Because when you're depressed, do you have lots of energy? Or do you have little bitty baby teeny bits of energy? You have less energy, right? So that's another factor as to why we get depressed during the holiday seasons. Another factor, the more people, this is a tendency, this isn't always the case, the more people we interact with in a closer fashion, the more friction that is created in between us and the other person. Meaning, you have relatives, you have in-laws that are at a distance from you in most cases, right? Because of our global economy. So they're at a distance in most cases. So the friction is minimal between you and the other person or persons. Friends, family members, doesn't matter, right? Then when you all, back up, then when you all come together and merge your energies with one another, you have friction, right? You have friction of thought, frictions of emotions, friction of even physical presence, right? So there's friction going on. That friction, energetically speaking, uses up prana, right? It uses up energy, and it creates sometimes not so good energies, right? So people argue and fight and disagree about religion and politics and family history with one another, which depletes energy, and it also creates friction within the family dynamic. So that's another factor as to why we can have depression during the holiday season. Also, that means if we're working more, Jeanette, I'm going to say, if we're working more, we're not getting enough rest, we're not getting enough energy. That means those are other factors that are contributing to lack of prana or lack of energy in our systems. Another one is there's a tendency for people during the holiday season to isolate. So isolation has similar results. So when you isolate, you're not giving and sharing energy with another person or persons, right? So that's also, you keep going within, you keep withdrawing, you keep withdrawing your capacity to serve, then you feel depleted, you feel lonely, you feel isolated, right? So one of the greatest remedies for depression is service. Now, what is service? Service is helping another person who cannot possibly repay you. That's what service is. Helping another person who cannot possibly repay you. Now, within the school of pranic healing and Hatha yoga, we emphasize service a lot because as you serve, you get. As you give energy, you get energy, right? As you give of your time, you receive more time. Does that make sense? So somebody who's depressed, what did we talk about earlier? Their energy level is very, very small. Their energy is very, very dim, right? There's not a lot of soul energy coming through them. It's there, but they're not realizing it, okay? So by going out and serving, Habitat for Humanity, a soup kitchen, a feeding program, helping the elderly, tutoring children, blood bank, a little bit different, but similar in some respects. What you're doing is you're using your energy to help another person's energy, so that means your energy is being magnified. Whatever it is that you give comes back to you many, many times. So from the perspective of farming, you don't plant one grain and get one harvest of a grain back, right? You get about 120 grains back. So if you give, say, 10% of your energy to somebody, you're going to get that back multiplied many, many, many times over. Have you noticed that people who are depressed tend to do what? Focus on themselves or focus on other people? They tend to focus on themselves. Why am I so miserable? Why am I so angry? Why am I going nowhere? Why do I have low self-esteem? Why do I have low self-respect? Why do I keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again? So number one, they're programming their minds with the questions that they're asking. Why am I such a loser? Your brain goes, well, these are all the reasons why you're such a loser, which drops your energy, drops your self-esteem, self-worth, and self-image. It's not true, but that's what's happening energetically, right? Versus if you can ask the question, how do I increase my energy? How do I feel more happiness and joy, enthusiasm, encouragement, confidence, competence? How do I improve? How do I expand? How do I move forward, right? Then your energy gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and your brain comes up with all the reasons and solutions on how to improve your situation versus staying stuck. So that's a big thing, is asking better questions, right? Anthony Robbins was big on saying, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. If you want a better quality of life, ask better questions. So if you're stuck all the time, you're depressed all the time, you're anxious all the time, you're not living a fulfilled life, ask yourself better questions. How can I move forward? How can I have more enthusiasm? How can I advance my career? How can I have better loving relationships with the people closest to me? Instead of feeling anxiousness with your family coming into town, how can you feel more happiness and joy with your family coming into town? How can you have that be a beautiful, harmonious experience? So it's a practice. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice of focusing on what you don't want and focusing on what you do want. And that requires lots of awareness, understanding, and consistent and persistent practice. Does that make sense? So those are some of the factors as to why we get depressed during the holiday seasons. There's less sun available, so less prana, right? We work a lot, so we have more stress, which depletes us of energy, and we have less, and we're putting out more energy, not for service, but we're just putting more energy out, which is depleting us as well. With more stress, we get less sleep. We're more susceptible to infections, colds, flus, etc. So all of these things are contributing factors. And then what we think about. Are you putting your attention on what you want? Are you putting your attention on how to help and serve other people? Or are you putting your attention on yourself, as in saying, why am I this? Why am I that? Why am I not moving forward? Yada, yada, yada. So it's a practice. Okay, now, the other aspect that I wanted to cover, that it's super funny. I don't know if it's super funny. It's funny to me. Is that I was listening to a YouTuber who's written several best-selling books, Ryan Holiday, and he talks about Stoicism. That's basically he chose that to be his philosophy on life, is Stoicism, the philosophy of Stoicism. And studying the 3 or 4 major Stoic philosophers. And he made an interesting point, and he says, look, these great teachers, these great philosophers who basically studied life, how to be successful in life and how not to fail in life, they cracked the code thousands of years ago. Think about this for a second. They cracked the code thousands of years ago. Not just Greek philosophers or Roman philosophers, but also Asian philosophers, etc. The great teachers throughout time immemorial have cracked the code. But isn't it interesting that instead of studying the works of these great teachers, we are put in a position to forget all those things, to say that doesn't mean anything, and we have to consistently and persistently reinvent the wheel on how to live lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, age after age after age. The principles that I talked about 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years ago in the case of the Bhagavad Gita, which was written in India about 5,000 years ago at a minimum, those principles are as applicable then as they are now in 2019, close to 2020. But we are still seeking what's the answer on how to live a good life. The answers have already been written, but we have to spend time studying those and spend time practicing those, right? Which brings me to the next point. So many years ago, Grandmaster Choa Kok Sui, my teacher, the modern founder of pranic healing and Arhatic yoga, he came out with something called the I am the soul affirmation. The I am the soul affirmation. And in that affirmation, he teaches us what we are, right? Which is a being of light, a being of love, and a being of power. Light, love, and power. Or light is intelligence, love is providing, and power is will, manipulating matter. And also recognizing what we are not. We're not a physical body, because what's animating my physical body? The soul. If my soul, my higher self, extracted its energy out of my physical body, that's it, right? So I'm not my physical body. My soul is using my physical body to move, to experience things on the physical plane. Then you have your emotions, where we feel. We feel love and we feel depression, right? Darkness. We feel it, right? So, recognizing that we are not the body, recognizing that we are not our emotions, because if my soul removed its energy, wouldn't have any feelings anymore. And we're not our thoughts, right? Just like the carpenter is not the furniture, the carpenter is creating a product, but the carpenter is not the product that he or she creates. So the thoughts, the feelings, and the body, or actions of the body, are all products of the soul. The soul is using these vehicles to work in the physical plane, the emotional plane, and the mental plane. That's how we grow, evolve, become better people, and become better souls. The problem happens when we start identifying with those things. So for instance, my friend on Facebook, who was talking about suffering from depression since he was 12 years old and he's now in his 50s, the reason, a big reason that he is suffering and has suffered from depression, remember there's many factors, there's not just one, is because primarily he is identifying as the depression. Does that make sense? He is identifying as the depression. So when he's feeling sad, when he's feeling depressed, when he's feeling melancholy and like he hit rock bottom, he feels that he is that. I am that. But that's not true. What is true? He is the soul. What is the soul? A being of light, a being of love, and a being of power. So when we practice that every moment of our lives, as we become aware of it, what starts to happen is we start to disassociate ourselves from what's happening to our physical body, what's happening to our emotional body, and what's happening in our mental body or our thoughts. Does this make sense? So it's not that we become indifferent. It's not that we become cruel or cold, right? It's that we start to make distinctions of like, wait a minute. Right now, my physical body in my case, my physical body is not feeling well. You can hear it in the tone of my voice and the congestion in my nasal cavity, right? But I'm not my body. I'm the soul. This body will heal itself, right? Within a couple days, this body will heal itself and we can all move forward together, right? But if I focus on what's wrong with me, I'm always sick, right? I'm always sick. I'm always this. I'm always that. We start to dim the light coming from our higher selves and we stop recognizing what we are, which is not the body, we're the soul. Not the emotions, we're the soul. Not the thoughts, we're the soul. So the recommendation to my friend would be, hey, I understand that you're suffering from depressing thoughts and depressing feelings right now, but you're not those things. You're the soul. And it's the constant practice of that. That's why when somebody comes in for pranic healing, we help accelerate that process because yes, if the person has a strong enough will, they can shift on their own from being depressed to going out, providing service, getting better sleep, reducing their stress, doing all these things, right? If they have the will. But in most cases they don't, because if they had the will, they wouldn't be depressed to begin with, because it is a function of will. And you go, Christian, that's a little harsh. That's a little not very compassionate. And it's like, well, I myself, over the past 25 years, have suffered from depression. But it was interesting because it wasn't necessarily based on a viewpoint that I had about thoughts and feelings, but it was connected to my eating habits. Sugar had been in my system since I was 4 years old, pretty consistently and pretty aggressively most of my life. So it was the neurotoxicity of sugar in my system that was affecting my ability to think correctly, feel correctly, and act correctly. I'm not blaming it on the sugar industry or blaming it on sugar. I'm simply saying that was the thing that was preventing me from moving my life forward. And it actually hospitalized me not once, not twice, but 3 times. And in those 3 times of being hospitalized, nobody ever did a blood test to figure out maybe there's something going on with his diet, right? Maybe there's something going on with his pH levels. They never figured that out. It took me having awareness of something is going on in my system that's causing my depression. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure it out, right? So I'm practicing a level of will. I didn't like this, even though I couldn't think straight most of the time. I felt erratic, depressed, suicidal, manic, you name it. I experienced those fluctuations through most of my life. But I had the will deep down inside of me to transform. So yes, I got healing from other people. Those healings shifted the energy temporarily enough to get me to the next level. And then I would use my willpower and I would change and I would learn, I would grow, and then I get more healing, and then I'd shift to the next level and shift to the next level and shift to the next level. And over time, sugar problem resolved, amongst many other things resolved. So that was super exciting for me. Super awesome, actually, to be honest with you. So my encouragement to each and every one of you is recognizing during the holiday season, we suffer from depression. Part of it is those factors: lack of sun, more stress, merging our energies with other people's, conflict, not having enough love, not having enough harmony, etc. And by having lack of connection to who and what we are, the soul, and by over-identifying with our thoughts, our feelings, and our physical body, we are stuck. The way to free ourselves, cleanse the energy, increase the energy, connect to the higher soul, know that we're light, love, and power. We have the power and the inner strength to transform ourselves. Super important. I can't emphasize it enough. And like anything, sorry guys, like anything, it's a practice. It's a practice, right? You can read a book about fitness. That doesn't mean you're fit. You can go to a workshop on fitness, it doesn't mean you're fit. You can listen to a podcast on fitness and it doesn't mean you're fit. You have to go to the gym or do the activity to be fit. So, Jillian, I'm going to say, if you want to have a stronger, deeper connection to your soul, it requires you to practice. And you go, Christian, well, what do I practice? Well, for starters, look up I Am the Soul Affirmation by MCKS. All right, namaste. Good to see you again. Look up the I Am the Soul Affirmation by MCKS. Memorize it and practice it all day long, either verbally or internally. And then, after a period of time, something will happen. You guys hear what I said? After a period of time, something will happen. A shift will occur in your consciousness. And you'll go, maybe that Christian guy wasn't so crazy after all. Maybe there was a point. There was a method to the madness. Like, how can memorizing an affirmation connect me to my higher self? Well, what did we just talk about? Practicing. So you can stay in your head, and I have clients that do this all the time in the beginning. You can stay in your head and theorize and philosophize about, well, I kind of get what he says about practicing this I Am the Soul affirmation regularly. Yeah, I guess it would make sense. I guess, okay, all right. And you never go online, never look up the soul, I Am the Soul affirmation, and never practice it regularly. So you're not any further along. What you just obtained was knowledge, which is in the throat. Knowledge alone will not transform you. Knowledge alone will not transform you. Applied knowledge will transform you. Stephen, namaste. Good to see you on. Getting ready for a foot and half of snow. Foot and a half of snow. The usual power disruptions and fun times in the mountains. We got lots of gold and crystals in our mountains. I'm towards a peak, so we're living in pranic energy vortex as we're applying the teachings day, night, and evening when we wake up from sleeping. Best we can. Keep it up. Good job. I love it. So does that make sense, guys? Spiritual teachers, I'm a little baby spiritual teacher, right? Grandmaster Choa Koksui is the big boss, right? I'm one of his teeny tiny disciples that is doing the best he can to get the word out. It's our responsibility is to share teachings with people, remind them of those teachings, but their job is to practice and master. David, namaste, long time. Their job is to practice and master. So right now I'm saying, hey guys, you want to have less depression, more joy, and a greater expansion of consciousness and connection to your higher self? Then find this thing called the I Am the Affirmation by MCKS, memorize it, and practice it throughout the day for a period of time, and then see what you notice. So that's the know, remember part. Your job is to practice and master it, right? Because it's interesting. The great teachers throughout every generation and time and space are always pointing to God. They're always pointing to the path, right? But what we do in our limited understanding and limited awareness is we look at their finger and we go, well, that's a white finger. I was expecting a black finger. That looks like a man's hand. I was expecting a woman's hand. That looks like a super, white hand, like almost sickly and frail. I like bright and tan and glistening and healthy looking. So we spend all of our time looking at the hand and analyzing the hand instead of what? Looking at where the hand is pointing or the finger is pointing. That's the thing that we have to constantly remember. That's why we get caught up in terminology, right? We get caught up in terminology and we get confused and we argue over the terminology versus, well, wait a minute. what is that terminology pointing to? So if I say spirit, soul, and oversoul, and superconscious, what would you say those things are? That alone would create enough conflict to have people fighting with each other, right? Versus those words are simply pointing to all the same universal truth. But we spend so much time arguing at the fingers, we're not looking where those fingers are pointing. So that's my encouragement to each and every one of you who are watching the stream is look to where the fingers are pointing. I know from my experience growing up in Massachusetts, and most people from Massachusetts are Catholic, so I was brought up Catholic, right? So if you say the term God to a Catholic, it can have positive or negative connotations. But then if people use other words, it affects them negatively. So you can say God to one person and that excites them. You can say God to another person and that causes them to close down. Or you could say Mother Earth causes one person to close down, causes another person to open up. Why? Because we're overly identified with the words. We're missing the essence of what the word is pointing to. So that's a practice that we have to let go of. Does that make sense? Is this clear to you guys? Sounding like Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, also G. Kondo, looking where the finger's pointing. MCS did enjoy Bruce Lee, correct. Bruce Lee was a very good teacher. He was having to overcome a lot of negative pride towards the end of his life, which I think was a factor, but he was a very good teacher in a lot of ways, and his impact is still being felt 50 years later. So, yeah, great teacher. So I hope that helps with you guys. The I am the soul affirmation can change your life, transform your life if you practice it regularly. All I'm doing is pointing to the teachings and instructions of my teacher, Grandmaster Chogo Kokusui. And again, all the great teachers from all the great religions and spiritual practices are all pointing to the same truth. They're all pointing to the same truth. So let's not get caught in the fingers. Let's get caught in where the fingers are pointing to. Yuvia, namaste. You're late for the party, girl. We just finished the live stream, so you have to watch the replay. That being said, for those of you who would like healing this week, please let me know. Cloud, namaste. For those of you who would like healing, please let me know. Go to ChristianRLong.com. You sign up for a healing session right there. And on December 26th, we're going to be offering one of the greatest healing packages we've ever put out there. And that's going to be for the purpose of helping you accomplish your goal for 2020. So pay attention to that. We'll be posting it on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all over the place. And it's going to be amazing. I'm super excited about it. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much. If you got value out of this stream, please share it on your personal and professional Facebook pages or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you hang out in the digital world, because if you're getting value out of it, people in your social network are also going to get value out of it. And that's it. So I love you guys very, very much. Happy Christmas Eve. For some of you, it's already Christmas. And for others that watch this later, it'll be after Christmas. And some of you don't even celebrate Christmas. So happy holidays and celebrations to everyone. And I'll see you very soon. This is Christian Long, Life Enhancement Consultant, wishing you a beautiful day, week, and life. Atma. Namaste. Bye-bye.